Welcome back. Now, the reality of maturing government debt seems to be dawning on the Kenya Kwanza government, as we're discussing, with the effect of the debt. Reality is now being felt by civil servants as well as traders who say the diminished purchasing power of government staff is slowly, of course, ebbing away. And Jimmy Bogo now reports on this particular reality, on the debt status of the country and the expected also maturity date, which we are discussing with the panelists here. Just listening.
It is true we are having challenges in paying salaries. We are having challenges in giving money to governors because the handshake government ruined this economy. They borrowed money left, right, and center.
It is a confession that has now become the topic of discussion in the country. A confession that seems to give a glimpse of why the country has been listed on the red by the World Bank at high risk of defaulting on its debt obligation. According to the medium-term debt management strategy, the maturity of domestic debt is expected to be the highest in 2023, majorly due to maturing short-term government securities. The strategy further shows that as of December 2022, Kenya debt to GDP ratio was at 60%, with domestic debt accounting for 33.2%, while external debt accounted for 26.8%. The medium-term strategy further shows that the country had an outstanding nominal debt of 8.9 trillion, comprising of domestic debt of 4.4 trillion and an external debt of 4.5 trillion shillings, which was going to cost the government at least 5.3% of the GDP to repay, where at least 3.9% would go to domestic debt servicing, while another 1.4% of the GDP would be channeled towards external debt.
We inherited a dilapidated economy with empty coffers. There was nothing. Whatever little was there is finished. William Ruto has started rebuilding this country from scratch. He found an empty country with nothing. Everything had been spent and stolen.
Despite claims of misappropriation of funds by the previous administration, the realities of debt obligation lie squarely on the Ruto-led team to find solution for the country debt management. And according to the National Treasury debt management strategy, the situation may get worse for the next 3 years before softening in 2026. The depreciating shilling may also worsen the situation for the government as external debt maturity is expected in the next few years. Jimmy Mbogo, KTN News.
Okongo Mogeni, maybe you want to have a reaction on that?
That soundbite was not really good for me. I didn't get quite what Rigathi Gachagua was saying. But in summary, it's still the same thing. What we have had every day, a crying government, a government that is there to, just give us blame games. This story of telling us that there are people who looted the economy. We have institutions in this country that if there was any credible evidence that money was looted, as we are being told, then we should be seeing some professional action from officers that are concerned. But I think, as I said at the beginning of this show, what we need from number 2, the deputy president, is to provide solutions. What he should be telling us is what will happen maybe from Friday in terms of bringing prices of essential commodities like unga, sugar, and that's what, I don't know whether when you become a president and deputy president, you get out of touch with the reality. Kenyans don't want these stories. The stories you are hearing from the DP, that's not what Kenyans are looking for. Kenyans want a solution that can put food on the table. The many problems, even I had Senator now Kas Maura saying that you people in the media, you are joining the opposition in painting the government negative. Just read what is in the back page of the Nation. That the students' health plan is on the verge of collapse. This is not propaganda. That's the reality. The Edu Afya program that was started by the retired President Uhuru Kenyatta, is about to collapse. And this happening when you saw last week, we lost lives of 2 students in Mukum. And then we come with this story at the back page of Nation, that this program that has been beneficial to students is about to collapse. Now, read what is in the front page of the Star and tell me whether this is propaganda. Pay strike looms in public service. Everybody knows, including Honorable Gachagua has admitted that the government is not able to service salaries. Yesterday I watched a documentary where the advisor, economic advisor D, was telling Kenyans, you can imagine telling Kenyans who have worked for 30 days, because you pay salaries in arrears, you are telling Kenyans that we either choose to default on our loans or pay your salaries. How can a government be addressing Kenyans like that? Because when you take over government, Debal, you know, when you're putting in your papers, you know that this country has borrowed. You know that we have a debt which is 9.2 trillion. So it's not news. It's not that this just came up after elections. You knew that this debt was there. And as a responsible government, it's up to you to plan in a manner that you will be able to service your debts and also make sure that the people you lead, because for you they should be priority number one, the people you lead should also be happy. So me, I want to spend a lot of time on this thing. We don't want to hear stories the way you put in that cartoon. That cartoon that was showing a president telling us stories, a CS, I think Murukomen, telling us stories. We don't want stories. Me, I'm in the opposition. I go back to Nyamira, I listen to my people. Anytime I get a chance, even if it's on this shore, on the floor, I will remind the government that Kenyans want the government to provide solutions to their problems. And if you think it's too much, we are telling you, you
then
can also resign.
Well,
if the heat is too much in the kitchen, you say, I cannot manage this country. I didn't know what was awaiting me. I can't even manage to pay debts. I can't pay salaries. That's how people resign from office. When you are unable to manage a country, you cannot take care of your civil servants. You can't pay the police. You can't pay the military. You are simply telling Kenyans, gentlemen and ladies, I'm not able to handle this. I'm
find somebody else.
Down. Let me have a walk. I give a chance to somebody else who can fix it. That is it.
I want to add to arithmetic. Let's talk about arithmetic. Out of the 650 billion in debt service, the amount we pay for debt, the foreign debt is about 160 billion. That's how much interest we are paying in foreign debt. 460 or so billion is domestic debt. Okay. Now, I mean, the sheer, should I say, incompetence then of this government. You are raising interest rates, domestic interest rates, which is making that figure that you have to pay in domestic interests, you are raising it yourself while you are complaining that, the
externalities as well.
Yeah. But it is your decision that is hurting you. Why do you want to blame somebody else? The total amount of interest that we are paying on the foreign component of debt, the amount is in the neighborhood of 160 billion. But what we are paying on the domestic side is more than 2.5 times that. And government is in charge of domestic interest rates. So this is why we've been saying, look.
But there has to be a rhyme or reason why they raise the interest rate.
And
they must have considered as well that it will hurt them. That will be the blowback internationally.
It is a question. It's a question of the left hand and the right hand pursuing different policy. Let me explain. The central bank is responsible for interest rates, and it uses interest rates as a tool to manage the cost of living, to manage inflation. Generally, when inflation is high, the medicine of the central bank is to raise interest rates Why? So that you borrow less, so that there is less money in the economy. And agreed? And that is exactly what central bank is doing. However, if central bank and treasury and the rest of government are working together, because remember what I explained, and I again invite Senator Mwaura and his colleagues to look at the explanation by central bank. The very last one, why did they increase interest rates? Because inflation is up. Why is inflation up? Because of the hike in electricity tariffs. So the Ministry of Energy and the energy regulator have brought up electricity prices, forcing central bank to hike interest rates. I mean, you cannot make this stuff up. This is people in the same government, even if they were worlds apart. I mean, that's why there is electronic communication today. So what you have is a group of people running government, each facing their own direction and doing their own thing, and the person who is getting hurt is a Kenyan. And what really is beyond pale is for the senior leadership to continue to dig a bigger hole, to continue blaming instead of taking corrective action. For example, what should they do? If we, Senator and I and others.
So what you're saying is there's no complementarity in the
there's no, of what they're doing. For instance, you would expect Treasury to remove the pressure on inflation, would immediately issue the legal notice that they issue every year to say we now want the target to be 0, so that when central bank is manipulating money supply, they are doing it in order to attain an inflation of 0%. That's what you would expect any rational team to do in order to bring down cost of living and manage the problems that are facing Kenyans. But they are not doing that. Now, the reason we believe it is, and I said already earlier, that when you look at the various individuals in government, you really cannot say that they don't know. I mean, I am sure Senator Mwaura is not incompetent. I mean, he has been in government, we've been together for a long time. I'm sure the economic advisors that my colleague Senator has talked about, they're not incompetent people. His own boss, the Prime Cabinet Secretary, has been around in government for more than 30, 35, and so on and so on. Maybe. So there is something else, which is that they are unwilling, they are not interested in doing their job. What they are interested in are the kind of scandals we've been seeing, doing things like getting Kenya National Trading Corporation to import edible oils and grains and so on, in a scheme obviously designed to create money for people in government, importing strange items like tractors from some unknown country like Belarus in a scheme clearly created to make money. That's what the people in government are doing. They are not spending one single minute trying to solve the problems, and that is what Kenyans are taking issue with.
Mm-hmm. All right, let me hear from Okongo Mogini. I think the question I wanted to ask you has eluded me. I will hark back to the question of the hustler and the Kenya Bureau of Statistics with their standard levy order of 1999, going back to the hustler to tax them, yet the bottom-up economy was all about the hustler themselves.
Why are you going to languages that hustlers don't understand? Begin with the border borders. Begin with the border borders. I mean, the border borders are facing taxation that they have never faced before. Go to counties and talk to the border borders. They are being heavily taxed under this UDA regime than before. And of course, if you pick electricity, the hustler at home, and I'm sure where the governor is coming from in Laikipia, and even Senator Mwaura, they are crying. And they talk language that resonates with a mwananchi who is down there. They are telling me that they buy electricity tokens of 500, and the government that Senator, my good friend Mahura, represents, takes 260 shillings. So all that they consume is 240 shillings. And that started 2 weeks ago under the Uda administration. And this is the person who was really, his passion was ignited. And he was told, once we go into office, this government will take care of the Hustler nation. Now you go in, the only thing they will remember you for is that on your 6th month, you increase the electricity tariffs in such a way that when they put tokens of 300, they only spend 140. You rob them, because that's robbing them. Because these guys, they're in that category of Kenyans that are making less than $2 a day, the Mamamboga. He buys that token, and you as a government that's supposed to protect that hustler, the person who put you into State House, you increase tax to take 160 shillings. Before the dust has settled, we have come from Easter, God of Abraham, Isaac, and Abednego. You again want to go to Kenya to again tax this poor Kenyan. The person who put you in office. Even when there is this biting increase in the cost of, rise in the cost of living. I mean, how insensitive, Dibal, speaking as now a very objective Kenyan, how insensitive can this Uda administration be? You took office within 2 months, the cost of fuel went up. You removed subsidy. Subsidy in the Mwananchi's language, a subsidy is a fund that you put in place to protect the poor. You are not protecting Governor Mureithi or Senator Mahura. You are trying to cushion the poor, the hustler person. You remove that subsidy simply because you don't care about this Mwananchi down there. Dibal, honestly speaking, when I sit back, I think the Uda administration wants to be too daring. You are daring fate. If you push the Mwananchi too much to the wall, you will see people on the streets and they will not go back until they have maybe a new government in place. My simple advice is, and you're also bordering on what happened in France. Kenyans are telling you, we can't put food on the table. Me, I'm not an economist. They tell you we cannot put food on the table. Then you respond and tell them,
pay more tax.
The best way to support you, I'm going to increase taxes on your electricity. And they're telling you we have no food. So you want them to eat in darkness in their homes. They have no food, but the little they have, you're telling them, you don't need to buy the tokens. If you buy, I will tax you more, eat in darkness. That's what we are telling Kenyans. Because if you want to increase tax even for this common Mwananchi, how insensitive can you be? I don't mind if you increase tax on motor vehicle imports, because that may not hit the Mwananchi. But what really the government is doing is hurting the hustler. The hustlers of this nation are being hurt more. Pain is being inflicted on them more than what Uhuru did. If you talk to them now, I think they are saying Uhuru was a good man. That's what they are saying. Saying Uhuru was a good man. Under this new government, we are suffering. The hustler nation is suffering, Maura. So when you get a chance, whisper to the president and tell him he's inflicting a lot of pain on the hustlers. That's why when we have a discussion from this team of 14, our priority is not what the president has communicated to the House. We are not going to solve Kenya's problems by increasing members of parliament, because the president wants us to increase members of parliament from 349, I don't know, to 600. That will be very insensitive. That will not be our priority when we open. What should be our priority is how to reduce the cost of living, how to put a smile on the poor Kenyan who is suffering, how to make education affordable. This, I'm sorry to use this language, but this nonsense of telling a Kenyan that bursary is there to give you 2,000 shillings, that's an abuse, really. If you tell Kenyans that you are going to give free education, let it be free. Let it be free. But you can't give somebody 2,000 and then you want to go on a TV station as a government through the CS Machogu and tell the Kenyans that the government is offering free education. That's what should inform the debate of us parliamentarians. These things of increasing seats for, people want to become members of parliament, Mwaura, that can wait. But reducing the cost of living cannot wait for a day. And if you don't want to fix it, then we invoke the sovereignty of the Kenyan people. We will force the government to reduce the cost of living if the government cannot listen to us. So that idea of taking us to the French Revolution, when they were demonstrating and saying they cannot afford bread, then you tell them, go and buy cake. Now Kenyans are saying they can't afford food. You are telling them, go to the shops and buy fertilizer. Where is the money then to buy fertilizer to begin with? That's a disconnect. It means you're not connecting with the people to understand their problems. They are telling you they can't afford food. You are saying you are making arrangements to import, rice. You are leasing farms in Zambia to plant maize. That maize will come in 90 days. I think unless you are not living in Kenya. So, Mwaura, fix the problems that are facing Kenyans. You are the ones in government.
I think
I'm sorry, you'll take all this flack because you're the face of government.
No, it's okay. I'm up to the task.
He's our cast now. He's the one in cabinet.
I'm actually.
And even if they were to pick 23, Mwaura must be among the 23.
By the way, if you didn't know, I'm actually the chairman of all the CASs.
Yes.
So
a big man. If they pick 23, must be among the 23.
He's a P2B now.
Yes.
The buck stops with us. But let me say this. It's very interesting to listen to my brothers here. Because, the problem with the power tariff, let's start from there, is because of these independent power producers. And they're very well known who they are and how they were charging more to government. So that KPLC really was almost insolvent because it was not making enough money. So we were kind of, having some kind of a painkiller without addressing the main pain, the real pain here. And we are dealing with a compounded problem of COVID-19. There were some measures that were put in place. Some of us really robustly advocated so that we did not have a total collapse of the economy when some people, like my friend Peter Kennedy, were advocating for a total lockdown. But then that was extended far too much so that then you could procure some political environment that was favorable to Azimio. Now, what has been the shift? The issue is now the president is saying, let us deal with the issues head on. And so that then in the longer term, we shall have a more longer lasting solution. Now, the Azimio is amplifying this current state of affairs to disenfranchise the masses and say that they were better off. They were better off because they were giving a painkiller, but not the solution. That one we are not going to do. Because if then you continue doing it that way, you will not really resolve the problem. For example, it's very, very important that we say Kenya Kwanza is very, very keen on ensuring that we have many alternative sources of energy so that in the long run we lower the cost of electricity, from wind, from solar and what have you, but also reduce the cost of investment into these projects so that then it is not just cascading down towards the bill that you find at the end of the table. But I don't think you can say that now because this is happening now, it is us who are increasing the issue, because look at even KPLC. They are not even able to pay their suppliers or even the poles that we are dealing with. If you applied for a meter, it would take forever for you to get even that new connection. So there's a very serious systemic problem because the previous administration under the handshake was not courageous enough to resolve the problem. And when you have a wound, you have to squeeze out the pus. That is what is happening now. And it's a bit painful, but I believe with the benefit of hindsight that it has been done before, then this can actually be corrected properly and preemptively ab initio. Let me also come to the issue of Director Mureithi. Your figures are not telling. I mean, let's say the truth. The monies that we are paying out there for debt is quite high. In fact, if you are to pay with the figure that you have given out that we have collected 1.5 trillion, it's a little bit more than that, because then you have to look at all the 4 quarters. Then if you have a budget of 2.1 trillion, then 3.6, you have a deficit of 2.1 trillion. This is money that you have to borrow domestically, which is about 900 billion, and then externally. And now externally, the problem is when you borrow with the dollar denominated or whatever, now like it has escalated, every shilling that goes up, it means that then we pay more than actually what we borrowed. So when you borrow domestically, somehow you are safer because you're borrowing in Kenya shillings. But of course, it has the net effect of crowding out local investors. That we must agree. It's a very big disincentive to catalyzing productivity. However, it is a really tough balancing act. I must confess, in terms of how do you move forward. Of course, the issue is to reduce expenditure in government, and you could see clearly President Ruto was very intentional by saying, can we first reduce 300 billion of this budget? Can we, in the medium term, reduce up to 900 billion, so that then we bring our budget closer?
Has it happened?
To the amount of revenue we are collecting? No, it has not yet happened as such, but there has been some reduction. Reason being, the 2022-2023 budget was not ours. It was the previous administration. The only way you can say that there is some money that has been, there's some new budget, is this supplementary that was tabled in Parliament. But the real effect of our government policy will start from July. That is when you start seeing now what is it that we are thinking, and you can see have a sneak preview under the BPS, you see. But the idea really is to reduce the cost of government. And I dare say there could be far much reaching measures that would happen. Of course, obviously, there are issues to do, for example, with the way I had spoken about, issues to do with who is being exempted for what. There are also issues to do with some of the taxes that have been proposed. How much is that we can net in, So it is not just a walk in the park, I must confess. And I am saying this on national television. Let Kenyans, with out of humility, give this administration some time. Let not the Azimio people shout us down because they know there is no way we will resolve these problems within the timeline that they are setting for us. They are setting us for a political contest against Kenyans, and of course it is very easy to be in the opposition. You shoot from the whip, from the hip. And you have no qualms about it because you have no responsibility. For those of us who are in government, have to also take up the slack because, somebody has to take responsibility. And I've said, and I've owned up to it. But then we cannot, and I want to say this, we will not resolve these issues based on Azimio's timelines. We will not resolve them based on their own rhetoric. We have our own pace, we have our own plan, and we are very honest people. If you look at Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua, he's an open book. He will tell you things as they are. He doesn't lie. Even when Azimio was undermining, he was candid by saying we are losing over 2 billion shillings a day. If you are to do that 4 billion in a week, then you compound. You can see how much money that was lost. And something that people don't know is that government does not have money that you collect at the end of the year, then you start dishing out like the way you want a salary at the end of the month. Money is collected on a weekly basis and disbursed on a weekly basis.
Daily basis.
And so therefore, that way, then you are able to say, okay, this week we collected this. These are the requests from the various spending agencies, ministry departments and agencies. So it's really a projection of that. And so when there is any kind of shortfall, it's a problem. And you can see if you look at even the the second quarter of last year. From May to November, KRA had missed a target by about 50 billion. So we are actually running on some shortfalls, going forward. But be that as it may, I want to assure Kenyans, looking at them straight on the face, that we in government, we have what it takes to ensure that we bring to the fore the priorities that Kenyans do have. And I know that beyond what is actually budgeted for, the president is getting new partnerships that are going to spur the economy, that are going to create jobs. We are getting PPP, actually. This is not something that Denito Muridi as an economist is not talking about. If you look at even today's newspaper, there's an advertisement for public participation to change the PFM Act so that you can have the public debt unit, something that was not being managed properly. You see, even the public debt register, that kind of thing, it was not made public. But now also PPPs are the new way to go because you are incentivizing the private sector to invest with you, so that then Kenyans can, release equity that can go to other forms of development, but not like the one of
But PPP is not new. It has been the Treasury as a department there.
No, it was a small unit. When I was the vice chairman of the Finance and Budget Committee of Senate, we created new regulations. Now we are scaling up. It has not been done in such a big way. And we are also not talking about, and you allow me to say this, People who have stolen money from government, investing offshore and then selling the same as debt to government. Because that's what was happening in previous administrations, where you actually use huge projects by government, you get money, then you get a syndicated loan that people wanachangia hapo, then you sell it back to government. That's not the kind of thing that we're talking about. We want to have a very cost-effective way of doing public-private partnerships with very clear timelines for return on investment. It's not just a question of spending out of government. So I think let us give government time. We have the plan. We have what it takes. Things are not rosy, I must confess. Life is tough for everyone. Businesses are not performing as much, but there is hope. And that is the confidence that we want to say to Kenyans that yes, it can be done, and we are going to do it.
Well, there's something.
Are we calling for a name?
There's something. I wanted government to respond with figures. We don't live in an island. Because we have our neighbors, we can benchmark from our neighbors. The cost of electricity in Ethiopia per kilowatt is $0.006 US. In Kenya, we are paying 0.064 after the increase that we saw from government. If you are spending, this is for government to listen now, the chairman of cabinet, administrative secretaries. Kenyans who are spending, and I'm talking to the hustlers, Kenyans who are spending 50 kilowatts of electricity per month, before this punitive taxation, were paying 1,000 shillings, 1,035 shillings average. Now with the increase, I just want you to see how the kind of pain this Wood administration is causing on Kenyans. Now with this new increase in taxes, they are going to pay 1,865 for 50 kilowatts of power. What is the difference between Kenya and Ethiopia? We are in this continent of Africa. Why is UDA administration wanting to overtax Kenyans? And this money is going to the fuel levy. So it's a direct taxation on us. It's money that government wants to take from our pockets, convert it to their own use. Dibali, if you go to income tax on pay in Ethiopia, the maximum is 20%. Here we are paying 30%. VAT in Ethiopia is 15%. Here it is 16%. Now, if you look at the economy, the Ethiopian economy is growing at a faster rate than our Kenyan economy. And that's why we expect when the government is speaking here on TV, facing Kenyans, you should first explain, why are you being so insensitive to the level that you want to overtax Kenyans? Why are you having this appetite to really rob Kenyans of their hard-earned money through taxation? Because this is robbery. I'm not an economist, but this is robbery. As I speak this morning, Kenyans who are watching me are wondering, how do you come to office and in a month you want to take away 700 shillings from an hustler, Kenyan? Because the person spending his money, average income, Mwaura, is about 25,000 shillings. So I've listened to Senator Mwaura, who I respect a lot, but I've not heard him responding to the concerns that are being raised by Kenyans. And these are the issues that we want to discuss before we talk about your proposals to increase MPs, which is our priority. If you want to increase our MPs, that's your priority. As we have the
cost of living.
Okay, cost of living.
Okay.
Can you tell us
this outrageous behavior of government? My explanation, observing what government you are doing, you say that your own budget will kick in July. When you came to power, you said, okay, this Uhuru budget, can you slash by 300 billion? And you went to television to say this, but you didn't do it in practice. Now, your own budget that you have prepared is 3.6 trillion. Uhuru's budget was 3.1 trillion, meaning your own appetite for spending money that is not there is an additional more than 500 billion. And that is why you are trying to squeeze the hustler.
Imagine.
You squeeze the hustler with electricity. You squeeze the hustler with fuel. That's why you have removed the subsidy. Yeah. You squeeze the hustler with excise tax. That is why all the consumables, that did not have or that had low excise tax, you have increased that excise tax. That is why you are chasing hustlers with an old standard levy. That we suspended when I was assistant minister responsible for that area. All of this is in order to satisfy these, shall I say, wanton greed, really, for excess. Yeah? I mean, I have no, and I'm sorry to use such strong language, I have no other way of explaining this behavior. Yet, on the things that you should do, like bring down the cost of living, there are well-proven tools that are on your table, decisions that you can take today, yet you refuse to take these decisions, and in order to confuse us, you tell us, let us pray. What are these decisions you should be taking? First and foremost, in your explanation for why you have increased electricity tariffs does not hold, because these IPPs, many of them in fact were entered into more than 20 years ago. Some of course were picked in between, but most of these IPPs that you are saying are expensive were entered into more than 20 years ago. How is it that we were affording them before you increased your tariffs last month and so on? So stop increasing electricity tariffs, reduce them, bring them back to where they were.
Yes.
Stop increasing interest rates that are bringing up your own cost of borrowing. And as you bring up your own cost of borrowing, you have moved hustlers who are able to get 50,000 shillings to stock their kiosk, maybe at 13-14%. Now they cannot get that money without paying 20%. And unfortunately, your hustler fund is not yet there. Yeah, your hustler fund fine is a very nice fund when you need a short-term overdraft overnight of 1,000 shillings so that your family does not sleep hungry, you can get hustler. But when you need 50,000 or 100,000 to stock your kiosk, hustler cannot help you. So stop these things and take the correct, and because, and I agree with Senator, that because you seem unwilling, and I mark my words, you seem unwilling to do good for Kenyans. Kenyans have a right to exercise their sovereign authority, go to the streets and tell you, Mwaura, enough is enough, go back to Ruiro. Let us look for a different person to do this one.
Okay, you could respond to that, but I wanted to just follow up with the question of, we have been, and I think this for Professor Ndungu is history repeating itself, because when he was governor as well, we had the shilling tanking and going to its historic low. By then, I think it was around 2012 or 2016.
2011.
Right now, he is still now in treasury. The shilling has actually tanked to 133. It's never happened in this country. How did he scoop himself out of that morass then, that he can actually use the same magic now? Because even fingers are pointing to him, who by then instigated now the falling of a shilling during his regime.
No, you see, that time, I remember very well, there was an issue of the global meltdown that really affected many economies. It's not just Kenya that time, because it really, the shilling lost a lot of value. And you can even see the dollar itself has lost its purchasing power by 97%, according to recent studies. And it was actually estimated, funny enough, that the shilling would go as high as 180. So, I mean, let's give credit where it is due, that at least it has been forestalled from doing that, and we could even see it, coming down. And we hope and believe that it is going to come down further to the proverbial at least 100 shillings, which is what we were used to, for quite a number of years just before this crisis came to. And of course, it is a problem that is affecting many developing countries, currencies, really. And it is quite, alarming, especially in the African continent, especially because if you look at even the rand has actually lost its value by almost 60%, really, from the way as high of maybe 12 shillings way back in 2010, 2011. So it's not just a Kenyan phenomenon, but of course that does not mean that then the issue cannot be addressed. It should be addressed because the governor of the central bank, and he told members of parliament during induction, there were people who were trying to do some kind of Anglo-leasing. They were trying to trade in foreign currencies that precipitated this further crisis, and of course he didn't give details about that. So that is also something that also need to be investigated. Who are the people who are trying to trade in currencies to the extent that then the dollar reserves may not be in the best stead. But I also want to also say that let's be honest that unga has come down from 250 to around 170. So unga has actually come down. If you look at the cooking oil, it has also come down. At least now things are stabilizing, going forward. And even what you don't want us to address, the issue of fertilizer. When I don't know whether Director Muriithi is a born-again Christian, but it's not good to demonize prayers. At least we don't agree with us in terms of prayer, as we believe in God, because surely we were told that rains would not even be adequate. But today, rains are pondering. In fact, today we almost missed the show because of rain. And that's what the president was telling people in Eldoret over Easter. Take this opportunity to plant, even if we are actually, importing 10 million bags of maize, but then take this opportunity so the next time we don't have issues to do with that. And if you look at the plan, it's actually addressing that issue, that the only way we are going to address the cost of living is through agriculture. You see, so there's a plan there. But of course, you remember we've just come from a very huge drought, that has had very serious effects. Even boreholes were not having waters in the neighborhoods that people use that kind of water. So it's really, we have to look at the history. We can't just amplify the problem as it has been created by Kenya Kwanza. To be honest, my senior brothers here, it's not the Kenya Kwanza problem. Yes, we agree with you that then we need to resolve the problem, but then also you cannot also expect us to do it right away. And also, let's come to the issue of Ethiopia. And you give a very good example of this country. And I was privileged to be there, I think, a month or two ago. Really, Ethiopia is rising. Ethiopia and Angola have overtaken Kenya for Kenya to be number 5 in sub-Saharan Africa after Nigeria, South Africa, in that order. Why is Ethiopia rising? It's because there seems to be a solution in the Tigray war. That is what is making Ethiopia, to minimize its, internal conflicts. And if you go to Addis Ababa now, buildings are just mushrooming. But then, Ethiopia, their bill is very strong. I think it is 1 to 10, if I'm not wrong. Very, very strong. Also, they have 110 million internal market of people. We are only 50 million, really. Further to it, they seem to be reaping the dividend of socialism, to be very sincere, because they have a more cohesive society, because socialist countries, left or center, tend to be more united. But now they are changing into a social market economy, the same way Deng Xiaoping did in China. But us, we started straight up capitalism. What is slowing us down is corruption, because we are taxing everything informally, even a decision that would actually make the country go forward, give my money, or look the other way around. So we cannot really compare in the comparative, because the political stability of Ethiopia is really reaping the right kind of dividends. They have an internal market, they have raw materials, and they have also invested a lot in their industries, really. In fact, at some point, they were even making tankers, for the military. That is how far they were going. And also they have an internal resilience, much as, some years before they were very poor, is that this is one of the only few countries in Africa that were not colonized. So they have that, is a century-old, institutional framework that is actually, anchored upon the Orthodox Church and whatever. So you have to look at that. Well, we are still struggling with the issue of nationalism here, of people believing that they are beyond their tribes, beyond Kikuyu and whatever, to become a Kenyan. So they are more united, they are more cohesive, they are more, forward-looking. They may have had their histories, maybe they have learned from their. But I agree with you. If Kenya was built as a transit economy around the railway, and that has been the advantage for many years, now that can never be. We have to look at new areas of growth. And one of the things that also this administration is keen on investing is minerals, really. We have a lot of, underground wealth that we also need to look at to see how we can offset our public debt and also create industries. So those are some of the issues. Please, I want to plead with my brothers here, my senior brothers, older than me, one who has been a governor, a minister, member of parliament, a senior advocate who has at some point represented me somewhere in a matter. Give the Kenya Kwanza administration an opportunity to prove its mettle, because it is too early in the day. Some of us, even we are even locked out of performing our roles in those ministries because we cannot we cannot access our offices. The growth of this economy.
We should be winding up now.
Yes,
just briefly, we should briefly.
Senator Maura, frankly, all we are hearing from government is a litany of excuses. And right off the bat, let me say, prayer is a good thing, and we should be thankful to God and so on. Prayer will not replace the action that you as an individual and as government should take. All we are asking government, please, stop excuses. And also, all we are hearing is that we have plans. Instead of telling us concrete action, that yesterday I took this action, today I'm taking this other action, and tomorrow I'm taking this other action, in 6 months I'll be taking that other action. All we are hearing is a kind of thing, the clip that was played here, about senior government leadership offering excuses upon excuse upon excuse. The action that we are seeing, because as citizens, what we feel is the effect of government action is government squeezing us harder for more taxes, government increasing cost of living by increasing electricity tariffs and things like that. That's what we are experiencing in Kenyans, and it is time for this government to stop. Now, you have said we give you time. Obviously, Senator Mwaura, if your intention is to go to Mombasa, and when you get out of here, you turn right, so going westwards, we must stop you before you go very far. You cannot tell us to wait until you have gotten to Nakuru, or worse off, wait until you are in Kisii to tell you are going in the wrong direction.
Thank you.
You are going in the wrong direction.
Thank you. We leave it at that. Let's hear from Okongo Mogini.
First,
Final thoughts?
I mean, I feel it's very wrong for the Uda administration to mistreat people like my good friend Mwaura. You cannot appoint somebody to this very plum position of cabinet administrative secretary, and then you give him no office. So you just appoint him to earn a salary of 1.1 million, but he has no office. Mwaura, if that was Azimio administration, we will never have treated you that way. We must join us. We must ensure that you have a good office where you can run the business of government. Not to allow you to just come and run government from KTN
Thank you.
offices. But I hope my parting shot to the UDA brigade, I hope this will be the turning point. I hope that once the 7 names are appointed and our 7 are appointed, we can now have a bipartisan discussion that is genuine, that will put the interest of the people of Kenya first than anybody else. So I hope there is good faith from your end, and I hope from tomorrow we'll say now this is the turning point for our country, Kenya.
Indeed. Thank you. Finally, briefly.
Yeah, thank you. I think, thank you very much. Okongo Mogeni can make a very good advocate. In fact, he's represented me before. I didn't say I don't have an office. I said we are out of office because of a court order.
You said
From the corridor.
There's a court order. That's why we are operating on the court. That's going forward. But anyway, let me say this. The people of Ruiru, I wanted to be your member of parliament twice. I thank God that opportunity went to somebody else, because somebody actually got killed because of bursary. And I had a plan to have 12,000 for everybody, because that's what you earn. I mean, you pay for secondary school. But to be sincere and honest, it's a crisis. I think people are in dire straits. People don't have money. And we need to do something about representation. Some of these constituencies are underrepresented. Ruiru requires 4 members of parliament. I'm sure it's the same case in Kisii and other places where people get 2,000 shillings as bursary. It's because of that underrepresented. However, we just need to do something more so that we can share the cake. Otherwise, if we don't grow the cake, we shall keep on complaining.
You did. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I think it's been quite an immersive discussion here, looking at the current state of the economy, and just doggedly following on the parliamentary meeting that is happening in State House as well today, and also the resumption of Parliament, where the matters of economy will be a catnip issue. David Tumberethi, economist, also immediate former governor of Laikipia. Thank you for coming through this morning, even with the rains. Thank you. Also, Senator Okongo Mogeni, Senior Counsel and Senator of Nyamira, thank you for coming through as well. I really appreciate you traveling all the way from KC and jetting in this morning. Nyamira, yes, Senator of Nyamira, thank you. And also CAS Chief, and CAS and Chairman. Chairman of CAS. As a we really do appreciate. Thank you for your valiant company. Don't go away. News Diary is up next.